Hello everyone. In this video we will discuss about how do we create a working full stack application using Spring Boot and React. We'll be hosting the complete full stack application in Render. First we will see the outputs, what we are expecting to have, and then later create individually for both Spring Boot backend and also React based frontend, and later we interlink them to make it a working application. So what we are expecting is we want to create a front-end static site using Render and also a back-end web service using Spring Boot hosted in Render. In order to do this, first we need to have the GitHub repositories for each of these individual service, and later we can connect them freely in Render and host front-end and back-end. So what we are expecting as output is a simple front-end page where we have this front-end content, and this is a message which we got it from the backend, and this is the URL which we have it here. So we will be creating such URLs for both front-end and backend and exchange those URLs in each of those so that they can communicate and give a response, something like this. So in order to do this, first we will be starting from the Spring initializer. So go to start.spring.io and create a simple backend Spring Boot based project. So we can select anything here. So I'm just to have similarity to the project, so I'm calling it as SB render 1. So this is, and add dependencies here. We will be needing Spring Web as the dependencies. This is an optional one, but we could add this also. And Maven is the build tools which we are using, and Java is the language. So generate this. When you generate this, it creates a zip file. Open this zip file in a project folder and open that folder in Visual Studio Code. Zip file into this project folder. So this is where I'm trying to create my project, y24_sb_react_render1. So double click on this backend folder. We will have this. So this is where we will be building all our backend stuff. So let's open this in Visual Studio Code. So go to File, New Window, and open this project. So this is my project, so open it, and so here we already have this. We could delete this now. This zip file we no more need it. So this is where we have all our files. For example, this is our Java file, and we have application.properties here. So in the same directory, in this whole directory, we will be having the front end also here. So first our job is, so we'll be following a manual in order to build these things. So this is my reference. So first is to, in order our front end to interact with the back end, we should have the controller part, and that controller part code is given here. So here my earlier project is SBR render. Now my project, our backend directory is SBR render 1. So except this, rest everything we can use that. So just I'm copying this and go back to src main Java, and you can right click on this new file, name it as hello controller.java, and paste this content here. You mention it as SBR render 1. Save this, and so you can see this path also, SBR render 1, SBR render 1, and this cross origins we will be seeing little later. So this path we will be getting from the render. So once we get the front end render link, we will be pasting it here, and these are not proper double quotes, so let's keep it different. So this is what we are having, and so this backend part of the code will be responded to the front end, so that we'll see it later. So first save this file, and now Let's go to the manual. As per the manual, we say that we need to include these in the application.properties in resource folder. So go to the resource folder, in the application.properties, paste this, save it, and once this is done, so we have already created this Java file. This is already existing, and this is what we created. So this one task is still there, which we will do it little later. And now our goal is to make sure that it is deployed in render. So in order to do that, we need to create a Docker file. So just right click and create a Docker file. So you can minimize this, go to this, and here right click and create a Docker file, and copy this code and paste it here, save it. And we are using 21 version of Java, so that's why it is here. Otherwise, if it is 17, we have to mention it appropriately. So once we have saved this, you can close this and go back to the manual. So the backend part is done. Now let's create the front end part. So just minimize this all. Here you can open terminal, new terminal, and press ls. So okay, this Docker file should be inside SB render 1, not outside. So this is where it should be. So if you do ls, this is the only one file. Now we should create front end directory also. So run this command. So there are multiple ways. So this is using white, and there are other ways to do also. So copy this, paste it here, npx create white @ latest frontend. So this is the name of the directory which we would like to create in this particular directory. So when you run it, it will ask you questions. So you should use arrows to select the appropriate one. I want to have React, and also I want to use JavaScript. So run it and use white. No, I don't need that. Install with npm and start now. Yes. So when you run this, it will try to install. So let's wait for it to complete. Successfully we get this URL localhost : 5173. Sometimes in the very first instance we may get an error, something as this, if at all, if there is no permissions to edit few files. If it is that case, we could actually use one of these both these commands to give the permissions, so that it will resolve the error. So once this is done, let's now go and edit each of those front-end files, main.jsx, app.jsx, everything. So let's go to our Visual Studio Code. So you can expand front-end. Here we have inside src all these files. So first of all, just confirm whether the part which is given here is same as what is mentioned here. So white.config.js, it is exactly similar. It has created by itself, so we are not writing anything. So main.jsx, it contains this code. So I'm zooming it little bit. So we are not editing anything. It is just calling this app component. So this is where we have imported, and we are calling this. So there is nothing to be edited here also. So let's go to the app.jsx. So if you see the app.jsx, so there's some default content we have. You could delete this, and you can go back and use this. So we are using two hooks, useState and useEffect hook, and simply using this useEffect hook to fetch this URL. We'll be mentioning the backend URL here at later stage, and once we get the response from the backend, which is this message, we'll be kind of printing this and also the message. So that's the task. So just copy this code and paste it in the app.jsx file. So this arrow, this should be very proper, otherwise we'll get an error. So this URL will get shortly when we create that in render. So until then, keep it just empty. So once this is done, we are completed with the front end related code. So now we have to create repositories individually for each of those and push them into GitHub. Now create repositories for each of those. So you could do a control C here. So we are in, so this is the backend Spring Boot code and this is the front end code. So first let's go to the Spring Boot code and here we can initialize a repository. So I'm zooming it further. So git init. So this is the command to initialize a git repository in this particular folder. So this is the backend folder which I'm trying to do separately, and then git space add space dot and git commit -m. You can write something like initial commit and we can press enter. So once this is done, we could type git branch -M main. You can just check that git branch, yeah, main. So now do the git repository. So there are multiple ways, so I would prefer this way. Go to GitHub and create a new repository. So I'm creating a repository, new repository. So here you can call it as SB render 1 and you can create this repository. And once you create this repository, it will suggest few commands. You can copy this git add remote origin and paste it here. So the current git local repository will be connected to the remote repository. So when you do this, it is connected. Now finally git push -u origin main, git push -u origin main. So when you do this, all these files will be changed to whole of the backend directory now is been pushed to the GitHub. So we have done one thing, so backend is done. So in the same way we should also do separately for front end also. So let's go and do the same thing for front end. So you could open one more terminal, new terminal, and here we could type ls. So enter into front end and here we could create a repository for front end. So in the same way git init and git space add space dot and git commit -m initial front end commit. You can write anything here. So git commit -m. So git branch -M main, git branch git remote add origin. So this we could copy it once we get in the GitHub. So here once again I'm creating a separate new repository for front end. So I'll call this as say render front end render or something, as front end render, and so this is already taken, so I'll call it as front end render 1 and create the repository. And once the repository is created, we can copy this command and go back to the Visual Studio Code, create git remote add origin, and once this is done, the final command, which is git push -u origin. So let's do that, git push -u origin main. So now we can clearly see here the whole front end is pushed to this particular link. So we have created both front end and back end GitHub repositories. So these will help us to create the render link. As I stated earlier, for So go to the render, click on start. So we want to create a static site for front end and a new web service for backend, and backend web service. So click on new, click on this web service, and it will ask for the public Git repository. So open, so this is the public Git repository of this project. So paste it here and connect this, and once it is connected, so we are using Docker here, we are not using any of this. So through Docker we want to connect our GitHub repo to render, and root directory is same, so we are not changing anything. So select free, and so there are two ways to connect to the front end. One is directly hard coding inside the code, and the other is through environmental variables. So first I'll be doing with the hard coding way, but otherwise we could also do this by adding the environmental variables. So deploy the web service. So this is for the backend, we are deploying a new web service, so it will take some time. So it has generated this link, so let's copy this link, and this we will be using in our front end code now. So go to your front end code, and wherever we were calling backend, so paste there, save this file, and we need to push it once again. So let's do that once again. So go to the backend terminal. So here, so this is the front end terminal, so we have made changes to the front end. So go to the front end terminal, and do the git operations once again. So we made few changes, so let's do git space add space dot, and git commit -m changes 1, you can write anything here, and finally git push origin main. So these are the 3 commands which we need to type. Yeah, git push origin main. So when you do this, our front end code inside the GitHub gets modified. So if you just observe the code, so this was our app.jsx, so now it has replaced it with our backend render link. So in the same way, so this backend service, it will take some time to run. In the meantime, we could also create a new service called static site in render for front end. So start for free, click on new static site, and place the front end repository link which is given here. So let's just copy this repository link, copy this repository link and paste it here, and create a separate so this is a public git repository, so create a separate and connect it. So we are connecting our front end code here. So here we have to, so the root directory is also an optional thing. So there are few commands which you need to mention, which have listed here. So the build command should be npm install and npm run build, so it's already there here. So we just need to mention 2 ampersands npm run build, and publish directory should be dist. So these are the 2 changes which we need to maintain, and this is an optional one. It will take the default. So here also, once again, if you want to give the backend environmental variable, which you can give it here, otherwise you can leave it and hard code it in the code. So deploy static site, so this also takes some time. So it has generated this URL, so copy this, and now go back to once again the backend code and write it, paste it here, the front end link. So this is the CORS origin. By default, front end and backend cannot communicate as they will be in different ports. So we have to use this chords to make sure that front end and back end communicate. So save this. Now go to the backend directory and do the same operations: git space add space dot and git commit -m changes to something like this, and git push origin main. So once we have done this, so the changes will be reflected in the backend directory. So if you go to the backend, so this is our backend directory, you can refresh it. Here in the src, inside this file, you will in the hello, not here, so we will have one more file which is main. So inside this hello controller.java, we have it here. So you can see the front end link is appearing now. So we have updated both. So let's first see whether they have successfully run. So this is the backend part. Backend has been successfully run, and the front end also successfully has run. So since we have changed the codes, we need to kind of deploy with the latest commit. So I'll just clear build cache and deploy once again. You can use the deploy the latest commit also, so both works. So run it once again so that the latest changes, whatever we have done to the code, will be updated and it will run accordingly. So it will take some time. The front end and back end are successfully executed. We will have these URLs with status saying successful. So the builds of both front end and back end are now done. So we can click on this front end and we can go and check for the output. So as you can see here, this is what we expected to have the output. So this is just the print JSX content which is getting printed, but this is the part which came from the backend. So this is the front end URL. This front end URL is invoking the backend, and the backend is responding with this content, and thereby we are able to display here. So what we did not see here is we could also connect to the database. Your backend or the Spring Boot code can connect to the database and retrieve from the database. So there you can have one more URL, render URL for database, and your backend or the Spring Boot code connect to the database and through that URL, and you could have one more output. That is not discussed here. That will be done in the later stages. Thank you.